Who here likes a good horror story? How about a real-life one? Well, this is the real-life tale of a man or a creature known as Spring-Heeled Jack. Now, he was known for terrorizing people, not killing, but terrorizing, and occasionally doing some physical harm to Englishmen, particularly in and around the city of London, as well as eventually the Midlands and parts of Scotland. This happened during the 1800s, and he was witnessed by hundreds of people of all walks in life, including doctors and lawyers and, highly respectable members of society, people who ordinarily wouldn't talk about ghosts openly and things because they had a reputation, and yet they would talk about Spring-Heeled Jack. They would go on the record and put their name down on the record for having witnessed Spring-Heeled Jack, and they would describe him, and he was always described as devil-like. In fact, he doesn't fit the description of a ghost or a fairy or a vampire or a werewolf, sure as hell not a Bigfoot. The closest approximation is a devil. But does he fit the description of a devil exactly? Not exactly like any other devil that has ever been seen before. Not everyone believes in that sort of thing. I'm not sure I do, but nevertheless, there's this very interesting case of Spring-Heeled Jack, which I will tell you right now. Thus begins the tale of Spring-Heeled Jack. The first report of Jack was from a businessman returning home late one night from work, who told us of being suddenly shocked as a mysterious figure jumped with ease over the high railings of a cemetery, landing right in his path. No attack was reported, but the submitted description was disturbing. A muscular man with devilish features, including large and pointed ears and nose, and protruding, glowing eyes. A few months after the first sightings, on January 9, 1838, the Lord Mayor of London, Sir John Cohen, revealed at a public session held in the Mansion House an anonymous complaint that he had concealed for several days, hoping to obtain more information on the case. The police were instructed to search for the individual responsible, and rewards were offered. Okay, I actually have a specific picture for this part of the story. Okay, here it is. Jane Alsop was young and pretty, and lived with her two sisters and father on a London back street. She had heard of the boogeyman named Spring-Heeled Jack, but she was too sensible to heed such foolish tales. One night there was a violent knocking at the door. Jane opened the door and saw a man standing in the shadows near the front gate, and he turned round. "I'm a police officer," he said. "For God's sake, bring me a light, for we have caught Spring-Heeled Jack in the lane." Jane was shocked. She ran to fetch a candle, but as she gave it to the stranger standing at the gate, he grabbed her by the neck and held her under his arm. He ripped at her dress and body. She screamed and tore herself away. He ran after her, caught her by the hair, and tore at her face and neck. Her sister, hearing her screams, ran out and yelled for help, but before anyone could stop him, Spring-Heeled Jack soared away into the darkness. Jane later described his appearance. He was wearing a kind of helmet and a tight-fitting white costume like an oilskin. His face was hideous. His eyes were like balls of fire. His hands were great claws, and he vomited blue and white flames. As years followed, these details were described by more witnesses, always the leaps, the flames, the eyes of hell. Lucy Scales was 18 years old, the sister of a butcher. She had left her brother's house one day on her way home with her sister. As they walked along a lonely street, a tall, cloaked figure jumped out of the shadows. He spit blue flames at Lucy's face, blinding her. Not a very nice figure, huh? During the 1850s and 60s, Spring-Heeled Jack was sighted all over England, partially in the Midlands. In the beginning of the 1870s, Spring Heel Jack was reported again in several places distant from each other. In November 1872, the News of the World reported that Peckham was in a state of commotion, owing to what was known as the Peckham ghost, a mysterious figure quite alarming in appearance. The editorial pointed out that it was none other than Spring Heel Jack who terrified a past generation. Similar stories were published in the Illustrated Police News. In April and May 1873, there were numerous sightings of the park ghost in Sheffield, where locals also came to identify him as Spring Heel Jack. Now, let's see. This is a photo of the location where this little story took place. In the 1870s, Army authorities set traps after scared sentries reported being terrified by a man who darted out of the darkness to slap their faces with an icy hand or spring onto the roofs of the sentry boxes. Angry townspeople shot at him in the street one night in 1877. Always he laughed and melted away into the darkness. Arguably the last time Jack was seen was in Liverpool, September 1904. He was jumping from street to rooftop, back to street again, jumping over a building in William Henry Street. When brave citizens tried to corner him, he simply leapt away into the darkness. No one has ever had any idea what Spring Heel Jack was. For a while, suspicion rested on the eccentric young Marquis of Waterford, but although the mad Marquis was one of the wild ones of Victorian society, he was never vicious. Spring Heel Jack's eyes of hell were last seen in 1904 in Liverpool, 66 years after the first sightings. There he started a panic one night by bounding up and down the streets, leaping from cobblestones to rooftops and back. When some of the braver residents tried to corner him, he simply vanished into the darkness from whence he came. For good? Yeah, so that's the tale of Spring Heel Jack. What do you think? Hundreds of people saw this guy, this thing, and I believe they've made a movie on him now, and there's been a number of different materials written, a lot of different illustrations of this character. When you look at him, he actually reminds me a little bit of Batman. I think that he's had quite a cultural influence, even though I'd never heard of him until a couple of years ago when I came across an article, and chances are you probably never heard of him before either. One of the most interesting, bizarre little cases I've ever come across. It's hard to know exactly what to make of it, but it certainly deserves some consideration. Hundreds of people.